Hello there, BookTube. My name is Daniel. Welcome back to my channel, Guilty Feet. I've got no rhythm. Today I'm just going to do a run through of everything I've read in the last couple of weeks because I haven't done one of these for a while, so I'll try and get through these fairly quickly. There's nothing here that really blew me away, so it's just a way of recording all the things that I've read, and I hope some of you find this interesting. The first is the only book on this year's Booker long list that I've read to date. I haven't been blown away. I'll probably wait to the shortlist and maybe pick up one or two of those, but I did read Western Lane by Chetna Maru. I was going to do a whole video just on this, but it just wasn't really there was no there. Really did nothing for me at all. One second. I've got here, this was, obviously this has been sent to someone called Justine as a review copy. I've got the little note here from Camilla at the, in the publicity department at Picador Books. Yeah, you can see her name is Camilla Elworthy. I've even got her email address here, so I may tell her that the book she sent to Justine ended up being sold for about half price on eBay. I guess Justine did read the book because there were a couple of pages that had been dog-eared, but that was about the most interesting thing about it. Yeah, I mean, it's about grief and a young girl, and her father wants to play squash, and just even in a short book, it hit the same beats several times and didn't really go anywhere. And I know books don't have to be life-changing and do something, but you know, this has been long listed as if it was something that had something to say, and it really did not have a whole lot to say as far as I was concerned. And I don't want to go back to the well of I've read other books published this year that were significantly better than this, but I have, and I don't know what the Booker jury is doing or how they're thinking, but if they read Salman Rushdie's book, or if they read Demon Copperhead, and they thought this was better than those, I don't really understand it, and this is not me being down on Booker or being down on that jury, but I don't get it. That's Western Lane by Chetna Maru. And then just a lot of backlist stuff mostly. So the latest in my Agatha Christie project, reading Poirot in publication order, and this was The Mystery of the Blue Train, in which there is a blue train on which there is a mystery. Great. I mean, Poirot is great. I don't think he even shows up till 60 pages into this book, and that's something that Christie does really well. There's a lot of setup, and then we get the slow burn of the solution. Trains clearly are going to be a familiar stomping ground for Poirot, but I think I'm still a few books away from the Orient Express, but I'll let you know when I get there. That is The Mystery of the Blue Train by Agatha Christie. After that, I read Christopher Hitchens' Mortality. The only other Hitchens book I read was Hitch 22, which was a collection of essays. And then as that was being published and he was on tour, he was diagnosed with cancer. And these are some of the last writings he did. There's some pictures here in the middle, pictures of him and his family, and Martin Amis, the late Martin Amis, who adored Christopher Hitchens and wrote a lot about losing him and seeing him through his illness. And this is from Hitchens' perspective. It's a very slim volume, and his book ended with, as an introduction at the beginning, from Graydon Carter, editor of Vanity Fair, for whom Hitchens was a contributing editor, and at the end there is the last 10 pages are from Hitchens' wife, and you know, he's such a brilliant speaker. He talks so eloquently about his mortality and how he's feeling through all this, and very, very moving. I know I should read more Hitchens, but maybe you get the best of him from watching videos of him debating on YouTube, where you actually see him in full flow, crafting and delivering these beautifully worded and thought out sentences. I wish I had known more about him when he was still alive and followed him more closely. That's Mortality by Christopher Hitchens. You know, just sad, very moving. Then I read a graphic novel, the first Umbrella Academy. I watched the series on Netflix when it came out, having not ever read the books. because I thought they were a bit too crazy for me, and really liked that first season. Not enough to go back and watch subsequent seasons, but I thought at that point, once I've liked the output, that I would go back and read the original source material. And this first volume is really good. For someone, Gerard Way, who was the singer in My Chemical Romance, this is his first published work, and it's really smart about comic book writing. Like, he knows his stuff. Sorry, I'm sniffing. Inside news, just to let you know, 1 second, while I'm blowing my nose. I have COVID again. First time in 3 years, but I tested positive. The only reason I tested is because I was supposed to be going to a wedding last night, and I knew that I wasn't feeling well enough to go, but I wanted a really good reason for telling them why I couldn't go to this wedding. So my wife had a set of tests still in her school from her school nurse, and brought them home, and I tested, and it turns out I am positive for coronavirus. Yesterday I was pretty grim. Today I'm ready. I'm on the road to recovery. Little lethargic, little that could be the pills I took. Little coffee, but temperature down. I'm good. But who knew that was still a thing? It is. I've got it, and that's why I'm home talking to you about books. Umbrella Academy, good. Like this. The artwork is not necessarily my favourite style, but I just thought this was well written and knowledgeable about how comic books and comic book superhero teams and the whole thing works, and sort of quirky and leaving enough for the reader to have to fill in the gaps, and good stuff. The Umbrella Academy by Gerard Way, drawn by Gabriel Bar. Then I read an Israeli novel that came out over 10 years ago, I think, which I'd never heard of, by an author called Shani by Anju, and it's written in English. But it is very much, she's Israeli, Shani, Shani or Shani. It could go either way. They each mean different things. So I know some people whose name is this, and they pronounce it Shani. And I know some people whose name is this, who pronounce it Shani. Just to let you know. I don't know which one she is. And this is a book about 4 women before, during, and after their conscripted time in the Israel Defense Forces. Some of this was very recognizable to me, as I, although I was never called up and never served. I've moved to Israel long after I was of any use to anybody. I have close family members who were conscripted. That's their story to tell, not mine. But the stories that I've heard from them, some of this is very familiar. Some of this is quite depressing. There's a lot of death around. Perhaps more than, again, my limited experience would lead you to believe is real. But the period she's talking about is before the service of the people that I'm familiar with, where there was more war and incursion into Lebanon. But the lives of these people seems to be fraught with the spectre of death, and also the absurdity of conscripted service and sitting in a watchtower or manning a checkpoint. There's a lot of sort of harsh realities here, and I guess some serious distress and trauma, but also some lightness. There's one story in particular which made me laugh out loud and just seemed very feasible. I think there's so much in here that it's hard to imagine this would all have happened to the same 4 people, the 4 soldiers that we follow through this. They seem to be stories that could have occurred at some point at different parts, at different times in history, but it's all held together. The People of Forever Are Not Afraid by Shani Boyanju. Perhaps a little inside for a lot of people. I'm not sure how this would play to a non-Israeli audience. People aren't familiar with the mechanics of the IDF. This kind of worked for me a little bit, but I just don't think it all comes together. And for my research, she's not written another novel since then. So I would look out and see if she has, what else she's written, and if she's still writing indeed. But this was The People of Forever Are Not Afraid by Shani Boyanju. Then I read Philip Roth. I haven't read Philip Roth for ages. I went through a whole Philip Roth period, and I was around for his late career Renaissance, starting with American Pastoral. But so didn't go back and read a whole lot of his earlier stuff. I'd read Portnoy's Complaint, and this is an earlier book of his called The Breast, which is a very short novel. This is 90 pages. And I think fairly inconsequential. It's a man wakes up one day, Professor David Kepesh wakes up one day and discovers he's turned into a breast. So clearly owes something to Kafka's Metamorphosis, which he then references throughout, and owes something to Gogol's story The Nose, which he then references and talks about. And I don't think I've read Gogol's story, but I know about it from George Saunders' book. It's a man who wakes up and his nose is missing, and later on goes out and sees his nose about town, taking people to the opera. And it's kind of absurd and never really explained. And this in the same way that he's turned into a giant breast. There's a little bit at the beginning that talks about how he's breathing and being fed when he's just a giant breast. But then after it gets, as you expect from early Roth, darkly sexual and unpleasant, and I think kind of inconsequential. My understanding is that Kepesh comes back in a later story, which is kind of referenced here. So I assumed that I was coming to Kepesh late, but the main Kepesh story is a later novel. Which I may or may not read. I have another. I picked these up in the charity shop for 5 shekel, which is like what's that, £1.20, and thought, well, I haven't read Roth for a while, and here's a way of adding to, and they're both short. I got this and the Prague Orgy, which I'll get to. Just adding it to my Roth shelf, but I don't think it's significant work particularly, although I'm sure Roth scholars will disagree with me. Then I read a sort of another bank robbing caper. This is Bank Shot by Donald Westlake. Even there's a lot of words up here. It says, if you can't blow the bank safe, what do? Steal it. The bank, that is. Bank Shot by Donald Westlake. So this is the second in the Dortmunder series. Dortmunder is a career criminal, and he has a crew, and they go off and they commit some kind of crime, and something goes wrong. These are comedy capers, comedy crime capers. So I've only read the previous one in this series, which I didn't like. The Hot Rock, it was called. Didn't love that. This is slightly more entertaining. What I have read of Donald Westlake is he wrote a whole series of novels under a pseudonym, Richard Stark, about Parker, which is a criminal, a thug called Parker, which are not comedies at all. Parker is a sociopath, and a very bad man that you do not want to get on the wrong side of, and the people that do end up paying the price. And it's been filmed a couple of times. Payback with Mel Gibson playing a character called Porter because they couldn't use Parker, and then recently there was one with Jason Statham and Jennifer Lopez, I think, called Parker, and then there was the original version of Payback, I forget the name of it, with Lee Marvin as the playing the Parker character. So I loved all. I've read like 18 of those, and all the Parkers that he wrote as Stark, and I'm now going back and picking up some of these Dortmunders, and they're okay. This was okay. Then I read a book of poetry, Don't Call Us Dead by Danez Smith. I've since watched a video where he introduced himself and he said, "Hi, my name is Danez Smith." So I've been calling him Danes or Danez, but Danez. Don't Call Us Dead is a book of poetry, not a white space. This is a gay black American man writing very movingly about being a black man, being a gay man, being a gay black man in America. I think again, this may have suffered from the way I read books, which is cover to cover, and this may do better if you dip in and dip out and read a poem and then put it down and do something else, and then we come back and read another one of the poems, because taken all together, it's only a small collection. Whole thing, again, 80 pages or so. When read all together, I think some of the themes sort of end up seeming repeated. There's a lot of blood. Blood plays a part in all this, and all the metaphors for blood, and all the way that blood interferes with our lives, and particularly the blood of victims, but also the way that blood has betrayed gay men with the AIDS crisis and HIV. There are also metaphors around cells. So cells are not only the places where black men are incarcerated, but they're also the things in our body which carry the disease. So I think probably, if you talk about things being more than the sum of parts or less than the sum of its parts, I think individually there's some really fine moments here. I think collectively it dragged a little bit and was a little repetitive for me, but I think that's more the way I read collections than necessarily the poet. So that is Don't Call Us Dead by Danez Smith. Happy to have read it. Maybe I should dip into it and pick one or two poems and revisit them in the future. After that, I read The Practice of Not Thinking, and I can't even get to Ryonosuke Koike. I don't know, I apologise. The reason I picked this book up, The Practice of Not Thinking, is because Matthew Shirapa, about a year ago, did a video where he said he liked it. I think maybe he was publishing it. I think he works for a publishing company, so maybe he was talking about something that had come across his desk at work. But he just had very positive things to say about it. I looked it up, I saw it was, again, another relatively thin book. I don't read a lot of self-help or non-fiction. I thought, oh, that'll be one to pick up and read. And so I bought it at the end of last year. I bought it over Christmas. I had it delivered to my mum's in London. Oh, excuse me. And it's taken me till now to get to it. And it's not exactly what I thought it was. Like, I thought it was going to be about self-help and about the way our mind holds us back, etc. And we should not think. It is that second part, but it is actually just an introduction to Buddhism. Nothing wrong with that. I just hadn't realised that going in. Actually, the parts that work best for me are the where it lays out the precepts of Buddhism and clearly defines what they are. And that's something I will go back and revisit, because there's a lot to be said for knowing that stuff. I can't find one of this. What are these? All the different rules and the disciplines and the things that are the fundamental aspects of Buddhism, I found super interesting, and we'll probably go back and visit them as a and to this lapsed Jewish seminary student. Some of the things were very familiar. The exegesis of the original precepts felt very familiar to me as someone who's done a bit of study of the Talmud, very little bit. There seemed to me the way things are slightly stretched and given an idea, and just accepted as, well, that obviously means, when we talk about you shouldn't be greedy, that obviously means greed for something else, or greed, and start from a starting point to then add metaphor to build a set of rules to live by is felt a little familiar. So I'm not sure if anyone's done a study about the similarities between Buddhism and Judaism before, but I felt, at least from the little study I've done into Jewish religious practice and learning and philosophy, I felt some of that was echoed here, which was kind of interesting. That is The Practice of Not Thinking, just mainly about the noise that our mind makes that stops us from being productive. I think probably the most important thing I should take from this is that I should probably start meditating. It just seems like a smart thing to do with one's time. Certainly smarter than the amount of hours I waste watching videos. Anyway, The Practice of Not Thinking by this gentleman here who used to be a monk. And once I finished that, I got to start my beloved Sadie Smith, The Fraud, which is I think it's chunky as anything she's written. So 450 pages or so, and I'm just going to really enjoy this. I've got Rosh HaShanah coming up this weekend, so that's 2 days of synagogue going. I'm going to take this with me, and I've also got lined up one of my literary white whales, Vanity Fair, great big chunky book that I'm going to be taking with me, either Rosh HaShanah or Rosh HaShanah Yom Kippur. Well, I'll have plenty of good, solid reading time. Hope you're all keeping well. Hope you don't have COVID. God bless. Bye.